Welcome back. Episode 148 of the Grouch and the Brainstorm. And Matt, it's been so long since we recorded this. People think that, we had finished the season
We've gotten,
finale.
yeah, we got more gray, both
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah. I'm just almost completely white. So my name is Mike, and I'm joined here today with my co-host, Matt.
What's
And
happening?
I am in Reno, Nevada, and Matt is in Bossier City, Louisiana. And we have not recorded in a long time, and I think the time change, Matt, kind of opened the avenues of staying awake and doing things longer and later and getting things done have hindered us in recording, but they have not hindered our sobriety and our recovery. So that in itself is a good thing. Before I forget though, I will say that our buddy Coleman, you remember Coleman?
I know him well.
Mm.
How
Yeah.
could I forget?
Yeah. So Coleman celebrated 13 years of recovery since the last time that we recorded, and I'm sure a lot more people have. And
I have a
um,
few that have around here, so yeah.
do you
Uh,
happen to remember them? They're from the library. You might be able to turn around
yeah,
and grab a
guys,
book.
see, that's where I keep my books right there in that space. Yeah,
You're pointing at empty space.
exactly,
The
exactly.
rest of them are Lacey's.
I'm like, Anchor Man said his house was full of leather bound books. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, doing a lot of reading. So, Mr. Joe B had 38 years. Is that right? 38,
Wow.
I believe. Yeah. So I'm 47. So that man, that's some serious sobriety right there. And one of those people I can always, if I have to talk about something and my sponsor's not around, he's one of those guys I would not hesitate to grab. And then our friend Danielle, that was one of our guests, or first guests. She just celebrated 6 years. So good job, Danielle.
6 years, man. That is just whoa.
Yeah. Yeah, and they've bounced back and forth across the country. She went from New York State to Idaho, and now they're in
Yep.
West Virginia. So,
Yeah. Back
um,
closer to home, anywhere to New York State. I don't know remember what
yeah,
home was. It's been a
she's getting
while.
a taste of the kind of people though that we live around down here in Louisiana. Hillbillies basically. So,
Yeah.
I think that's a good culture shock for her. We talked about it the other day, and she's getting a kick out of it. So, um, yeah, yeah. So anyway, but yeah, yeah. And then Coleman did have his birthday. I was trying to think of somebody else I may remember here in a minute, but I remember Mr. Joe for sure. So,
That's a good thing though. What have you
oh
been
yeah,
up to?
man,
You
one that's it's probably pretty important for me that's coming up probably before we record again. My sponsor will have 9 years on the 10th of this month. Today is what, the 4th of the month.
Yeah.
So he'll have 9 years, and man, he's just trucking along with it. And he's been my only sponsor. And like last Sunday, we spent the day, actually went to church with him. Then we left and went and got in a bass boat the rest of the day. You know, we still talk about things. It's not a moment to moment basis anymore. It's not that the world's on fire every time something happens. But man, that's just really good to have that, to still be there and still be trucking along with that. And we just talk about things like we always do. I'm real grateful for that, and I'm happy for him working about
I
to have
I remember
9 years.
I remember the day he came into the koala club. He was on, like, one of those weekend getaways they have
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the recovery
Rehab.
center. Mhm, I
Hmm.
remember the first day. Yeah, and, you don't normally, I don't know how to describe it. It's just you don't normally think that later on you would hear that, they're about to hit 9 years, working on a decade of sobriety when you
Yeah.
remember the first day. And he tells his intervention story, and he's told it on
Hmm.
here when we had him as a guest and just as a fellow podcaster. But and what a remarkable thing, especially to be in the public eye.
Yeah.
He's in the public eye, and he's a family man, and he's just a all around good guy. And obviously, Matt, he's helped you remain sober for a while. So, um,
Absolutely. And his son, I know his family. he knows my family, a lot of my family. I mean, he goes to church with some of them. So it's kind of been just he is part of our family, and that's just been, that's one of them God things that puts people together. And I'll tell all this in this public knowledge, so he's not gonna mind that I tell it. But when I asked him to sponsor me, slid over to him. It was like my second meeting that I've been to, and all I knew was I got to get a sponsor. That's all I knew, right? So he sat over there with Doc. You remember Doc?
Yeah,
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 I love Doc. That was my favorite old timer because he was off the chain, and I could respect
yeah.
that. Doc was like grumpy old men kind of. But anyway, the second meeting I was at, I believe, or the third, I sat near him every meeting, and I didn't know what a sponsor was going to do. I just knew I had to have one, and I was like, man, he don't look too weird. He don't look like he's a serial killer or anything like that.
Well, he
So
does look he has that aura, the
well,
serial
that's the
killer
military thing. He could kill you. He just wouldn't do it because of a
with
mental
cereal
illness.
in his
Yeah.
hand.
Yeah, the serial part. He don't mind killing anybody. I can tell you if need be. So,
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, you and him
but
go out killing quite
right
often or
circumstances, he'll pop you in a second. So, but I went over to him. I said, "Man, I guess I need a sponsor." And I was like, "Are you doing that?" And they used to raise their hands. And he said, "Well, unbeknownst to me, I was like one of the first people that asked him. Me and Cal were kind of neck and neck there." And he said, "I don't think you want me as a sponsor." And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because I've only got just over a year of sobriety. I'm a public official. I got drunk and slammed in the back of a lady's car at a red light. I got arrested by my own parish guys." And he said, "And then they put my picture all in the Inquisitor." And I went,
yeah,
"You sound like the perfect dude for me, bro." So
yeah.
yeah, you fuck up good. So anyway, but you're right, man. That's another level to that of being in the public eye and those things happening, you know, and being out there. I'm glad none of my crap made the paper, other than maybe a little line here or there. And he's done really well with it. So.
Well, I'm glad to hear he's about to have another birthday. What you been up to, man? I know you've been working a lot and fishing a lot. I do see the Instagram reels of you out there catching fish. You don't really post the
Hmm.
work too much, but,
Yeah.
fishing some bills.
You and me are a lot alike, and I do like to work, and I kind of like that's part of my recovery in a way. Is like I probably can overdo it at times, but the springtime of the year for me is the busiest time of the year. There's about 4 months where it's just like no telling what's gonna happen. Don't make plans to do anything. Just what you take it day by day, because it's just what you do in the nature of our business. You just never know what weather's gonna do, what things are gonna happen. And but I like it. This is my 18th year of cutting grass, and I pretty much roll with the punches. And I know the long days are coming, and that's just that part of the year. But yeah, and then it's hard because you want to work, but also it's probably one of the best times of the year that fish are biting. So it's like, do I work? Do I fish? So, but for the most part, it's work, and I try to sneak out there and fish a little bit, but just rocking and rolling, man. That's what I've been doing. It's been wide open. Got to go see my grandbabies the other day. They're doing really well. And got two of our listeners in from South Louisiana. They're at home making jambalaya right now. Mr. Bo and Miss Melissa, they're at the house cooking it up. Man, they've been here and made boudin cornbread yesterday, dude. Bruh,
Yeah,
I could have ate the whole pan. So
pretty
anyway,
good. That's
they
a
kind of
side dish. You ain't supposed to just eat the whole dish of cornbread. That's the
I just took the pan and I was like, "Were y'all gonna eat too?" And then I just
yeah.
started eating and let them watch me. Is what I did. So, yeah, they're always cooking it up. So they kind of spoil us rotten when they come up here. But man, that's been it, man. Just a lot of work and rolling along. And sobriety's been good, man. Spent Sunday last Sunday in church, and they didn't throw me out or nothing, man. They let me come in there and stuff. It was nice. I was kind of surprised, but.
They do that sometimes.
Sometimes, well, and it helps. Bobby's son is the youth pastor there, so his grandbabies go there, and it's cool to see him too with grandbabies and doing that kind of thing. And yes, he would shoot you if you tried to rob him or or did whatever. But if those two grandbabies walk out, that's a different cat right there. That's a different guy than the. So it's funny to see that. They got him well trained. So, but life's good, man. Life's good.
My, speaking of grandbabies, I hadn't gave an update. My grandson was supposed to go to Philadelphia, and the day before he was supposed to fly out, they called and canceled his flight because of lack of staff. And so he is still just sitting there waiting in Bossier City, Louisiana. He's doing good. He ain't quite had his surgery yet. We're thinking maybe May, and I think that is the guess of all of it. But one thing I did get to do in this little bit of time, because I have still worked every day, but I hadn't seen my son since I left Dallas back in August. And I flew him to San Francisco and went over there to San Francisco and I picked him up. And we drove from San Francisco back here to Reno, spent the night, and got up the next morning and went to Tahoe and played around down in Tahoe, just climbing around in the mountains and taking pictures and stuff, and then headed to back to Dallas. And so we drove, all the way Tahoe to Vegas, and then from Vegas to Amarillo, and Amarillo into Dallas. That's a Boy, what a heck of a trip. But we got to spend a
Hmm.
few days together and do a little stuff together. One of my exciting points of that is we're going down, I don't know these highways, man. We're headed down a highway, ain't seen nothing in God knows how long, 3 or 4 hours, not even a gas station. There's a sign that says Winslow, Arizona, 12 miles. And man, I had to do it. I couldn't help myself. I said, man, I got to go stand on a corner
On the
in
corner,
Winslow.
man. Yeah.
And Imma tell you, brother, in 1972, the Eagles released that song, and that one lyric, "Standing on a corner in Winslow, Arizona, such a fine sight to see." That one lyric literally has made this town a boom town, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that right in the middle of nowhere, and they have, of course, they have a couple statues of Glenn Fry right there on the corner, but they also have a flatbed Ford, that the next
Yeah.
line is the "Girl, my lord" in a flatbed Ford slowing
Yeah.
down to take a you know, and, so we got to see that, and then, just the other sites, and then, of course, we got to Dallas, and just in time to hitch up the boat and get it off the water and had him head on to South Carolina. And I got on a flight and flew back to Reno that night. But I got to spend a few days with my son, and that was pretty cool. I hadn't seen him in a long time, and of course, we get to going down the road. And I hadn't even really talked to my grandson, my oldest, who is now 8, and he's all he's into music, and I bought him a GoPro, had it sent to his house, so he's gonna get into doing a little videography
That's a
here
good.
shortly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I told my son, you better watch what he records, son. Some of that stuff might be evidence, and so you might want to,
Do a little
yeah, yeah.
editing every night. Yeah.
Yeah, that, man. So, but besides that, spending time, man, it's just been it's been nonstop work. Matt, it snowed here Monday. Today's Saturday. Last Monday, it snowed.
It's
Yeah,
been
it wasn't a lot, but it
it's
snowed.
been 80 degrees plus for about 10 days now.
When I got into Dallas, man, that was it was so hot. I'm not used to humidity now, and I'm not used to 80 plus, which to me wasn't even hot then. That's good motorcycle riding weather now. Hell, it
Mhm.
gets up to 60, and I'm jumping on that bike. But Matt, we're in the 4th month. We're in April, and that is the month that we talk about every day, really, in our readings of daily reflection. And we're either going to talk about the 4th month being our taking our inventory, or that 4th month taking our or talking about that fourth tradition. One of the two things gonna come up in the meetings, and that's just generally the go to. And you know, I was thinking the other day when I was doing my little reading I do every morning into the same camera that I'm on right now. I talk to myself really because I don't publish it, but I just give a rundown of the reading. And I was thinking to myself, about that. How many people don't make it to that fourth step? You know, How many people don't get there? And what happens to them? I mean, they don't. Some of them I never see again. I probably sponsored 30 people that we were right there. We were, drawing all the charts and diagrams and talking
Yep.
about the warranty if you get the 12-year, 12,000-mile warranty and all that stuff. And then the next time they, hey man, I got, my ass is sore. I can't come today. And then,
Yep.
grandma's in the hospital and it just, kidney machine broke down and all these things, and you never see them after that. And how many people do you think just and why? And I know you talked earlier to me. You said you had a tragedy happen in your life. I
Yeah.
guess it was in your life, a tragedy, somebody's life, and does that have something to do with it? Is it a
Well,
fact we can't face our own bad behaviors?
I'm glad you brought that up. So, and it always made me wonder. There was a couple of guys I used to run around with in my early 20s, and they were brothers. They were a couple years apart, and the drug scene was real. I mean, we did drugs, we drank, we did all that stuff, partied, and ended up moving away to Arkansas, and didn't keep up with them, but we all went down the same path. I stayed on the path I was on. They stayed on the one they were on. And I don't want to tell too much of their business, but the older brother, while I was living out of state, got into it with a family member, walked out the back door of the house, picked up a gun, deer rifle, put it to his heart, pulled the trigger, fell over dead in a flower bed at a relative's house.
Wow.
This was 10 plus years ago. Just recently, this past month, the younger brother hung himself. And I moved back in there and kind of ran into the younger brother quite a bit before I got sober. And I really think, man, being around him and the things that had happened with his brother, he seemed like he was trying to find a way out of it, you know? And I know for a fact, I guess you would have had to have asked, but I mean, that area where we were at there, I don't know anybody that I would have asked, even thinking back on it now, like, how do I get some help? Like, don't know who I would have asked. And I'm sure he felt that same type thing because I know there were times he and I like ran into each other. We were going to go do something or whatever. And he was like, oh, I'm trying to do this, trying to do that. And he was like, he was trying to hold off on doing things or not do as much or, you know, and, and I mean, he lost that battle. And, thank God that some people came to me and went, we have a place if you want to go. And I, for whatever reason, chose that. And I think about it sitting there with him and both of us high as shit and drunk and everything else. That never really was a topic that we talked about, was actually getting sober and staying sober. But I saw some of the effort with him to, like, basically saying my head's messed up, what I've got to figure out a way to get out of this. And it hit me. It was like, man, they never got that option, like it was never, I never remember him talking about any meetings or rehab, none of that stuff. And I never did back then either. But it just to me, I sit there and go, man, what if, somebody had ran into us back then and been like, hey man, and it would have really had to have been somebody like us. And I think that's what's great about Alcoholics Anonymous. If the preacher had came down and talked to me and him, we'd have been like, whatever, man. Like, you don't understand what we got going on. But if one of us in this outside this room I'm at now, they're having a meeting about 10 feet away. If one of them guys came and talked to us, I'd have probably listened to him and at least thought about it. And I just don't know that he ever got that. So it's just that's a family with two sons and they're both died by suicide. And it was drug related, and there was some things that we all have, and mental health things and all those kind of things, but 100% drug and alcohol related, no doubt about it. And it just I more than anything, I sat there and I feel bad for their mother. But I went, thank God that somebody did come in there that day for me, because that'd have been the same road. I'd have been down that same road and was heading down that same road. And I just think about him and those guys, and I'm like, man. And I had a lot of those guys, man. A lot of those guys that I used to hang out with are dead. They're dead. I mean, dead from straight up drugs and alcohol destroyed their body and their life. And I sit there and think back on that, and I'm like, none of them ever. I never remember talking to one of them, and the word meeting came up, the word rehab came up, 12 steps never came up. You might hear one of them maybe say their preacher tried to talk to them a little bit, but and that's kind of, I guess, why we do this stuff we do now. It's like, man, there's so many people that still aren't, they're not catching it, some kind of way. It's not registering, but yeah, it is. It's sad that you're almost numb to that kind of stuff now, like I feel bad, but I'm like, I would have been the same way. And I don't want it to seem like I'm callous about it, because I'm not. But man, that is the way this ends, And so I know I drug my feet on I didn't have any problem 1, 2, and 3. I had no problem. I rolled right through them. When I got to 4, I went, wait a minute. I don't know about all this now. We can do them like those other ones. I did those pretty well. And my sponsor said, "Look, this is where we're going to separate the men from the boys and the women from the girls." And he said, "You can take this serious and do it as best you can, and you're gonna improve, or you can let it fall to the side, and it's totally up to you." And I did. I dawdled around with it for a long time, and he finally told me, he said, "XYZ on this date, you're gonna read me whatever you have on that paper, finished or not. I don't give a shit. We're going to read it." And we did. And man, that was the first time in the program where I went, oh, like, I felt a growth and a getting better, and felt better about myself and about sobriety and about all those things. That was the first big step that I went, this is the actual moment in sobriety here, and
And
I continued on with it from there. But
well, you realize a lot of folks too, we I'm guilty of it as much. When I sponsor someone, I make so much out of that 4th step, and a lot of them are like, "Yeah, I'm getting to it," or "Yeah, I've," some of them even go as far as to tell you they wrote some shit down yesterday when they didn't. But, but a lot of folks, like, they never even actually pick up a pen. They never even
mhm.
actually, and I don't even think at some point, I think they may be scared they're gonna disappoint their sponsor. They're not gonna write what they should. They're totally just off the rocker when it comes to it. And truth is, the first thing you need to do is pick up a pen. That's the first thing, or a
Mhm.
pencil. Pick up a pencil. The second thing you need to do is get you some paper. It doesn't matter what kind, just probably not the toilet variety, because it tears real easy with a pencil. I know that. And then you want to get you some pen, some paper, and then just start writing. This is what I done, right? Just start. You're taking your inventory. You're not taking anybody else's. Nobody wants to give a shit why you did it at that point. Just get it
Yeah.
and start writing something, and you'll be surprised. Like, some people can't stop once they start, but you gotta start. You gotta take that pen, you gotta get that paper, and you don't have to sit there and look at it. You can just start. And you know what, Matt? You can start anywhere.
Yep.
You really can. And the big book does lay it out. It does. And there are 4 different inventories. You got your sex inventory, you got your fear inventory, you got your resentment inventory, and maybe it's just 3 different. Anyway, you got these different inventories. You ain't got to just sit down and say, "Hey, look, who made me mad?" Well, Bobby, Matt, Cal, Chris. Okay. What'd they do to make you mad? Well, Chris, ate my last bowl of Cheerios, and Cal was, loving up on Chris, and he's my man, or whatever, and you put that
Yeah.
down on paper, and then you got to say, okay, how did that affect me? What did it do to me? Did it make me feel resentment towards Chris because that was my last, but you see where I'm going with it, right? None of this stuff's
Right.
real, by the way. These are just scenarios, but and so it does lay it out so where you don't have to do too much thinking. A
Yep.
lot of that thinking is gonna come up in that 5th step, but
Yep.
and then you go through that list and that's it for that point, and then you go back and you figure out, "Hey, where was my part in this?" Well, probably shouldn't have left the freaking Cheerios, sitting out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Probably shouldn't have bought Cheerios. Should have known that Chris loved Cheerios, right?
Yep. Yep.
Especially if you got somebody else coming over and, but we don't even get that far is where I'm going with it. We just get to the point of where we just like, yeah, I'm gonna do it tonight. Yeah, I'm gonna do it tonight. Man, there's a lot of times where I write these full blown podcast scripts. I'm working on one now called Destination Never, right? And I write a full blown script, and I can do that in my living room or on my bed. But boy, when I come down, I don't even want to mess with it. I don't do anything when it comes to recording, sitting in front of a camera, none of that. And I've got, I don't know, 25, 30 mics, and a lot of them work independently where I don't even need any of this. But I don't sit down and do it. I just don't. And I think that procrastination is a big issue when it comes to the 4 step.
Yeah.
And that is what we hear when we hear these old timers say, you got to do the work. You got to do that's some of the work. That's
Yeah.
where really is where the work begins because it's no longer a speaking thing, Oh yeah, I got a problem. Well, step one. Well, I do think that, God can help me get better. There's step two. Well, you know what? I'm going to turn my will and my life over to him. We're step three. And you just said them. You ain't done nothing. But when you get to step four, you got to actually put some pen down, right? You gotta lay that ink on the paper and you
Hmm.
can't smudge it. So and I would hate to think that someone kept all that inventory inside to the point where it made them get self-destructive.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
And that's what I
procrastination
think.
that
That's where I think the thing is, and like, and to tie that in too, like we do a 5, 5, and 15. So on step one, we write as well. You get paper out and you write, and we sit down and go through that. So you're giving examples leading up to that of, hey, bro, this has become an issue. We can both look at it here in black and white, But you talk about the balking on step four. A lot of people, step one, it's balking. And then you get into the God steps, and they're like, well, I got one done, but I'm not doing two and three. I don't believe in this. I don't, so. But I think four is the one to where, for me personally, that was where, I mean, I knew before I went to rehab that I was powerless. I didn't know that was a thing. I didn't know that was a step. I just knew I can't stop on my own, and all my shit's messed up. So,
Yep.
you know, and I grew up with faith and having a faith in something. So that wasn't a stretch for me. So those three were real quick, but then it was like, hold on, I got to write this crap down. And then I think Bobby told me, he said it separates the men from the boys, and he said also, if you screwed a goat, now's the time to tell me. And I don't know if that was the exact wordage he used. And I was like, dang, bro,
Well
you just went right to the goat.
well, now that you talk about it, when me and Wyatt were on that trip, he said that he had a counselor at that facility he went to that always started when he told his story. He said that he had some, intimate relations with a goat, and that might be, yeah. Like, and I guess his point was to tell everyone. Yeah, I don't know if I'd start like that, but
Well, I don't know.
you throw it in
Some
there.
things the Lord
You,
don't want to know. You know what I'm saying? Just
yeah, you throw it there in the middle somewhere
you
because
can do as
you
thorough
got
a
a
job, but you
traumatized
don't have to
goat.
be that thorough.
Yeah, but Wyatt said he starts out his story talking about that, and the whole point was this is where this well, this is what alcohol and drugs made me do. But I mean, you got people that don't even need alcohol and drugs to do that. So you might have three people sitting out there in the audience going, "Shit, I did all that before I even drank."
What do you mean drinking?
But what does that mean? I can't do it anymore?
They got an app for that
But
now, a dating app, with a man goat
and
love.
maybe that's why they
Mm.
started using the abbreviation GOAT for other things.
Look, it always kills me too. I love the psychology of like serial killer, those type people.
Yeah.
And it's violent what they did and it's horrible and all that stuff. But the part that fascinates me that I watch them is that the guys will be so normal in areas of their life, and then they're over here eating a guy. When they get off work, they're just gnawing somebody's arm off, and it's like, yeah, and I work at the gas station down there too, and everybody loves me, but I'm
Yeah.
eating people in my spare time. That
Yeah.
part I don't understand where that line, and I guess that's why I watch that kind of stuff. But I watched the one about Dahmer that came on Netflix a few years ago, and they
Yeah.
kept harping on his alcoholism. Okay. And I'm sitting at home by myself watching this on Netflix that night. And I got pissed, and I mean, alcoholics, we take a lot of licks, okay? And we
Yeah.
will we will
Yeah.
admit to our faults. And we're talking about that now. But I almost wanted to email Netflix and go, I don't think the alcohol was the biggest problem in his life. Maybe it was killing dudes and eating them and putting them in a barrel in his room. I've drank a shitload of beer. That's what they said he drank. Beer. He had all kind of beer. I know a million dudes that drink a lot of beer. None of us have ever killed or ate a guy. So I don't know. I don't know that
That you
alcohol is
know
the
of.
primary.
That
Yeah,
you know of.
that I know of, but I don't know that that's the primary reason in this deal. So, but
Well, hence we have the fourth step because alcohol made me do it can't be an excuse, right?
sure,
So this is where we find out really that we were the problem. The alcohol was the solution to our problem. And we have to have a better, a more viable solution. So when we get to dealing out that fourth step, we can realize why we were so miserable because of all the stupid shit we did. And we can no longer say alcohol made me do it. It's character defects that made me do it. And then we're
yeah,
going to talk about what we did and how we got them out there. And very, and I don't even want to overcomplicate it now in case there's a newcomer out there and they're listening to us. And I don't want them to feel like, hey, man, just grab a pen first or pencil, grab some paper, preferably loose leaf or a notebook, sit down and just start writing what it says in the big book. Your resentments and your fears and your relationships and what they call it for some reason they call it a sex inventory, not necessarily meaning the act thereof, just meaning that it is an inventory of your relationships and where you did wrong. And I think when you cover all that, you can it's something there's a seed that starts to be planted and grow, showing you where you were the problem.
yeah, yeah,
If
and
that makes
even yeah, we turn that for me. We turn resentments into things that were of our own doing most of the time. I mean, I would comfortably say 95% of mine were all of my own doing in one way or another. And
Yep.
so what those two steps taught me was, even if I was wronged by someone else, where in my behavior or my character defects of being too nice to somebody, not having boundaries, letting them run over me, then I resent when I could have just said, hey, stop doing this. I'm not going to be involved in it. And I never would have been faced with that resentment and that problem.
And we
Uh,
will drive ourselves to extreme conditions in order to not say no.
Yeah, but even those things, when it gets pointed out and you learn to look at it a different way, and you go, "Oh, I could have just prevented this," like I could have stopped this in its tracks because not judging someone else, but I know how that person is. I just don't need to be involved with them because if I do, and so that to me was like I was like, "Oh, I got it now," and so but you know what? That's kept as the years have rolled on is I don't get the resentments coming back. I don't add new resentments because I just go, well, yo, that is what it is. I screwed that up. I should have watched this or I should have, and I just go on with it. And so I don't have to carry all that stuff around. But I do think people are too, they take it too literally to where they're like, I stole a piece of candy out the store when I was 3 years old, and I'm going to have to write all that down. No, you're going to have to get started on it and give it a good shot, and if everybody's honest, like it says, being honest with yourself, the things that are bothering you and are really causing that feeling, and you get those big ones out, man, those little ones just, it's done.
100%, brother. 100%. So, fourth step, very important, but the most important thing is getting started and actually doing it. And I think that'll once we get past that procrastination, we can discover a little bit about ourselves that'll help us stay sober for quite a long time, man. I've done a couple, 3, 4 steps in my life, and I've got pretty good recovery. I like to think I do anyway. I still
Hmm.
I still talk to alcoholics and read my big book, go to meetings every now and then, and so very important. Matt, I'm glad we got to record, man. I'm glad you took time out to spend with me, and we need to do it again sometime
Yeah.
soon.
I will bring up one more thing while we're on here that I've
Absolutely.
had on my mind. We talked about the guy Shia LaBeouf had a relapse during Mardi Gras,
Yep.
right?
And Amy down there sent me a video of him.
Yeah, he's still out there, as from what we can tell, and I'm not speaking on other people, but this is all over the news and everywhere, and God bless the guy. I think he made a really good attempt the first time of getting sober. I remember seeing when he started that journey and he was doing so good, and I feel like he'll get it reined in, I hope, and get back on the horse there. One of my other favorite people, and I root for us. You know what I mean? Even when we're out there, alcoholic in his cups is not a lovely, it's an unlovely creature.
That's right.
Tiger Woods, my guy, Tiger.
Yeah.
Lacey and I had this conversation the other day, and I said I feel bad for Tiger, and she said why? And I said because all that money he has, the advice around him is going to be his team. And how do we keep Tiger? It may not be the advice that he needs. It may not be mama get in your butt and say this is about to kill you. You need to stop everything you're doing and focus on this, and more of handlers. And I feel bad for people like that because I think they're at a disadvantage where I walk in a AA clubhouse straight out of rehab, and I don't have people chirping in my ear saying, "Oh, you don't need that. You don't, you got all this stuff. You look at all the cars you have and the homes and the yachts." And I didn't
Professional,
have,
professional. You need a professional to come in, and truth is, you don't. You need Mr. Miyagi to come in. You
yeah,
know,
yeah,
you need someone
and
that's going to make you sand the floor and paint the fence.
yeah, and Tiger's had 2 or 3 car issues, rollovers. He did one in California, hurt his knee a few years ago. He was back with the when he was running around with all those waitresses, and he went to rehab in Hattiesburg for sex addiction, and all that's public stuff. But a lot of those guys go because it's a public relations. Well, I went to rehab, so I don't. You know, I just read before I came in here that he got permission from the judge to go to an international rehab, some fancy place. And I just thought, man, if they had dragged his ass to Corinth, Mississippi, where I went,
Yep.
run by the state of Mississippi, and throw his ass in there and tell him take his hat and his glasses off in the building, follow the paint on the floor when you walk, keep your head down and don't look at women or anybody else, and you eat the same food that the county jail eats every day. They didn't give a shit and stick him in there for about 90 days. He's either going to get it or he ain't, but I promise you, they don't give a crap if he's Tiger Woods. And I say that because Tiger's one of my favorite athletes of all time. I mean, he's to me basically Michael Jordan, and I hate to see that. I want to see him get better. I've seen his son. He seems like he has a good relationship with his son, and his son's doing well in golf. And it's like, man, you want to see people do well. And But I can tell you, as a gentleman who rode around with loose pain pills in his pocket all the time, when they pulled him over and he's got 2 in his pocket, not in a bottle, or bro, there's something there. I mean, this is
Yeah.
not just a, you know. So I just hope that maybe somebody around him says, maybe it's his kid, and says, "Hey, Dad, like it's time you got some, like, we need to look at this. Like, this is getting ridiculous." But yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever prayed for Tiger Woods, but I've been kind of praying for that guy here lately. So
I need to add him because
yeah,
we all the same when it comes to alcoholism, man. He might be able to hit a little golf better than I can, but he he can't drive better than I can.
well, and hey,
Like,
you know what? And here's the funny part about that. And I'm just using me as an example. Big be anybody in this clubhouse that Craig just stuck his head in the door and waved. You take Craig. Craig's got more sobriety than Tiger Woods. He could teach Tiger how to live sober. He could help him with that. So all those God given talents are great, but we have to get around folks like us that are serious about it to get better and to get in that kind of group. And you know, I don't know if it's AA or what it is, but I mean, I just hope that he's got those people that go, Tiger Man, like this ain't got nothing to do with nothing else. You're gonna die from this. But anyway, you know, praying for him and Shia LaBeouf. I like that guy too, and I hope he can get it clicking.
some talented fit folks, man. They got some talented folks, and unfortunately, this thing we got, no matter what you call it, it just don't care what your talent is. It's
And it don't care how much money you got. You know,
no
the guy.
that could be a hindering.
Yeah, I really think it is, because I think you're in a different world than most of us. And that's not you know I don't think the attention to truly caring about somebody else, and then somebody truly going, hey man, I don't want your money, I don't care about your yacht, I don't care if you play golf or not, here's what we need to do. And then him being able to listen to that's going to be the second part, and take it to heart. So but he's welcome at the Koala Club anytime. So
Amen, brother. Welcome there. We've had celebrities there, myself not included. I don't,
well, I was going to say, Mike, you and Cal
yeah,
and Coleman are probably the 3 biggest celebrities
well,
we've had, and the autograph seekers wear y'all out.
yeah. Well, every once in a while I got to step outside my southern comfort zone and leave the small town for this whatever this is here, desert. and but I'll be back. How about that? I'll be back.
I had a dude early in sobriety. It was after a meeting. It was back when I smoked, and I was standing outside the door smoking on the front, and some guy just kind of come in there, and he was mouthing about this and that, just standing out there smoking. And you come walking by and go get in your car, and it was a fancy car. I ain't gonna say what kind it is, but it was a nice ass car. And you're like, "Hey, see y'all later." Get in your car, take off, and the guy goes, "Yeah, that must be fucking nice having a car like that." And I was like, "You know what that dude was doing about an hour and a half ago?" And he goes, "What?" I said, "He took all the trash out in the building where you've been throwing coffee cups and shit in there and spitting in it and all that stuff. He did all that before any of y'all got here. So shut the fuck up," is basically what I told him. And he just was like kind of looking, and he's still around. That guy's still around, and he's done better. But I was like, don't you don't know what people do and don't do, and just keep that to yourself and worry about yourself.
Yeah.
So,
We
but
all at the
anyway,
koala club, man. No matter how you look at it, we all at the koala club. And a lot of
Miss
folks
Dana,
need
I
to be
love her
there.
to death, and she's our clubhouse lady. If there's a toilet, I finally texted her the other night. I said, I feel like we have a connection, because if there's a toilet issue in the men's room, I'm the guy. She's like, hey, this person's messing. I'm like, Dana, you always call me when it's a toilet issue. Like when I see Dana on my text, I already know someone's clogged up a toilet. So hey, it's all hands on deck around here. So
Well, Matt, good to see you, brother. Take care.
yes,
Tell the
sir.
family I said hi. And I look forward to later in the week when we can get together and do another episode. How about that?
Sounds good.
All right, guys, from Reno, Nevada, and Bossier City, Louisiana, Mike and Matt, we're the Grouch and the Brainstorm.